The first 30 seconds changed everything. Henry Duarte had always believed one thing: if you prepare for every possible disaster, nothing can destroy you. He was wrong. Because that night, on a rain-slick highway, control didn't matter. Money didn't matter. Experience didn't matter. The car spun. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. And in the back seat, his 9-year-old son whispered one word before everything went black. "Dad?" Cut to hospital lights. A doctor removing his glasses. And a sentence Henry would replay for years. "Your son will survive." Pause. "But he may never walk again." That was the moment Henry stopped being a father and became a guard. After the accident, the mansion changed. Security doubled. Schedules monitored. Staff rotated constantly. Every caregiver background checked twice. Henry didn't call it paranoia. He called it protection. But Miguel noticed. Children always notice. The house stopped feeling like home. It felt like surveillance. Miguel stopped asking questions, stopped laughing, stopped believing tomorrow would look different from today. Henry bought advanced rehabilitation machines, imported specialists, built a therapy wing inside the house. But none of it fixed the silence. And Henry couldn't stand silence, because silence left room for guilt. Clara didn't look extraordinary. No dramatic entrance, no bold confidence, just calm, which made Henry distrust her immediately. "Why this job?" he asked during the interview. She didn't mention salary. "I know what it's like when someone survives, but doesn't feel alive." Henry's jaw tightened. "How?" "My father had a stroke. I was 15. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. From the hallway, Miguel heard her voice, and for the first time in weeks, he rolled himself to the door. "She sounds warm." Henry noticed that, and that scared him, because warmth meant attachment. Attachment meant risk. And risk meant loss. So that night, he ordered hidden cameras installed in Miguel's bedroom. Henry watched the screens the third night Clara worked. She entered quietly, sat on the floor, level with Miguel. "I brought a story," she said. "Not a motivational book, not a medical manual, a love story." She read like someone who believed words could heal. She changed her tone for characters, paused for emotion, let silence breathe. Miguel leaned forward, then a smile, small, fragile. But undeniable. Henry felt his throat close, because that smile wasn't forced, it wasn't polite, it was alive. And it wasn't for him, it was for her. And that's when something dangerous began. Not romance, not yet, but comparison. Henry started watching more, at first to ensure safety, then to measure something else. Clara spoke to Miguel like he wasn't broken, like he wasn't defined by a chair. "You're still you," she told him one afternoon. Miguel whispered, "Does Dad know that?" Henry froze in the security room. Clara paused. "He's learning." That sentence haunted Henry all night. He wasn't learning, he was observing. And observing is safe. Participating is not. But then one night, Miguel looked toward the door during reading and said, "Sit with us." Henry stepped inside. Clara handed him the book. "Your turn." He stumbled over lines. Miguel laughed. Clara smiled. And for a brief second, Henry felt something that terrified him. Hope. Weeks passed. Miguel improved slightly. More eye contact, more speech, more will. Henry began turning off monitors occasionally, just to sit in the room. But control is addictive, and addiction doesn't disappear quietly. One afternoon, while dusting a shelf, Clara noticed a reflection, a tiny lens. She stared at it. On the other side of the house, Henry stopped breathing. She stepped closer. "If you're watching," she said softly, "I hope you're seeing that your son needs love, not surveillance." And that was the moment everything shifted. Because she wasn't angry. She was disappointed. And disappointment cuts deeper than rage. Clara didn't scream. She didn't confront him immediately. That would have been easier. Instead, she'd simply unplugged the lamp beside the bookshelf, lifted it slightly, and revealed the hidden camera completely. On the other side of the mansion, Henry's pulse pounded in his ears. She looked directly into the lens. No tears, no fury, just clarity. "If you're watching, I hope you understand something." She paused. "Love isn't safer when it's monitored." Then she turned away. And Henry felt something he hadn't felt since the crash: exposure. The next morning, Clara walked into his office before he could call her. She closed the door behind her. "You put cameras in his room, not a question." The statement. Henry stood. It was for protection. From me? Silence. He tried to regain control of the conversation. "You don't understand what it's like to almost lose. My father died slowly in front of me." She cut in, calm but sharp. "Don't tell me I don't understand loss." That hit him harder than shouting ever could. She stepped closer. "You're not protecting Miguel. You're protecting yourself from guilt." The word guilt landed like a verdict. Henry didn't argue. Because deep down, he knew she was right. What neither of them realized. Miguel was in the hallway, listening. He didn't hear every word, but he heard enough. That night he didn't ask Clara to read. He didn't ask Henry to sit. He just stared at the ceiling. "Did you put cameras in here because of me?" he asked quietly. Henry's throat tightened. "I wanted to make sure nothing bad happened." Miguel's voice was steady. "Bad already happened." That sentence shattered the room. "You can't stop it by watching." Henry had no answer. And for the first time, Miguel looked disappointed in him. Not angry, disappointed. Clara began keeping emotional distance, professional, polite, less laughter, less warmth. Henry noticed immediately. "You're pulling away," he said one evening. "I'm setting boundaries. Because of the cameras? Because trust doesn't survive surveillance." That line lingered. The attraction between them hadn't disappeared. If anything, it was stronger. But now it was complicated, charged, fragile. And Henry realized something dangerous. He didn't just want her in the house, he wanted her in his life. And that terrified him more than losing money ever could. As if the universe wanted to test him, the international investor called again. This time, the offer was bigger. More money. Full relocation package. Medical specialists in Europe. Guaranteed access to cutting-edge treatments. "This secures your son's future," the investor said. Henry looked through the glass wall of his office. He could see Clara in the garden with Miguel, laughing, helping him stretch. That laugh echoed inside him. "Future," the investor repeated. Henry whispered, almost to himself, "At what cost?" That night, Miguel refused therapy, refused dinner, refused eye contact. Finally, he said it, "If you move us again, I won't try anymore." Henry froze. Try what? To get better. The threat wasn't dramatic. It was real. Miguel was exhausted. Exhausted from adapting, from surviving, from being strong. Henry suddenly understood. He had been preparing his son for battle. But Miguel didn't want to fight. He wanted stability. Clara packed her bag slowly that evening, not leaving yet, but preparing emotionally. Henry noticed. "You think I'm choosing money over him," he said. "I think you're choosing control over connection." The silence between them thickened. He stepped closer. "You think I don't care? I think you're afraid to love anything you can't control." That was the truth. And truth doesn't shout. It cuts. Later that night, Henry stood alone in the security room. The monitors were on again. He watched Clara reading softly to Miguel. Watched his son smile faintly. Watched the warmth. He could sign the contract tomorrow. Secure everything. Or he could risk everything, for them. He reached toward the monitor controls, paused, and whispered, "I don't know how to do this without control." Behind him, unnoticed, Miguel had rolled into the doorway and heard everything. Henry didn't know Miguel had heard him. He only realized it when he turned around and saw his son in the doorway of the security room. The screens were glowing. Clara's image still frozen mid-sentence. Miguel's voice was quiet. "Are we moving?" Henry swallowed. "I'm thinking about it." Miguel rolled forward slowly. "You always think alone, that hurt." "I'm trying to protect you." Miguel shook his head. "You're trying to protect yourself." Silence. Children can be brutally honest when they stop being afraid. "If we leave," Miguel continued, "I lose her." Henry didn't answer. "And if I lose her, I don't know if I want to try anymore." That was the first real ultimatum. And it didn't come from an investor. It came from his son. The next morning, Clara requested a meeting. She was composed. Too composed. "I need to step back," she said. Henry felt the room tilt, because of the cameras, because this house feels like it's preparing for a future that doesn't include me. He stepped forward. "That's not true." "Then prove it." He hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. She nodded slowly. "I won't compete with control." That line echoed long after she left the office. At the corporate building, the contract sat open on Henry's desk. Lawyers waiting, investor on speakerphone. "This secures generational wealth," the investor insisted. Henry stared at the signature line. His hand hovered. He imagined new country, advanced clinics, perfect medical resources. But he also imagined Miguel silent again, Clara gone. A house full of technology and emptiness. "Mr. Duarte," the lawyer prompted. Henry picked up the pen, paused. Signed, the closing page of the folder. Not the contract. He closed it. I declined. Silence on the call. "You're making an emotional mistake," the investor said coldly. Henry replied calmly, "No, I've been making logical ones." And he hung up. That same evening, as if fate demanded one final test, Miguel collapsed during therapy. His body went limp for several seconds. Clara screamed his name. Henry felt the air leave his lungs. Ambulance lights. Hospital corridors. History repeating, doctors rushed, tests were ordered. Henry's composure cracked completely. In the waiting room, he couldn't sit still. "I should have taken the deal," he muttered. "I should have secured better specialists." Clara grabbed his face firmly. "Stop." Her voice was steady but fierce. "This isn't about money." His voice broke. "What if I fail him again?" Her answer came without hesitation. "You fail him when you run from fear." Not when you face it. Hours later, a neurologist emerged. It was a stress-induced episode, the doctor explained. No permanent regression, but he's overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. The word struck Henry. Miguel wasn't breaking physically. He was breaking emotionally. Henry entered the hospital room slowly. Miguel was awake, tired, small. "I don't want to keep starting over," Miguel whispered. Henry sat beside him. "You won't?" Miguel looked at him. "Promise." Henry didn't use the word lightly this time. "I promise. No relocation, no disappearing, no emotional distance." For the first time, Henry chose stability over strategy. Outside the hospital room, Clara stood alone. Henry approached her. "I declined the deal." She didn't respond immediately. "Because of us?" she asked. "Because of him," Henry said first. Then, after a breath, "and because of you." Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Heavy. Real. "I don't know how to love without fear," he admitted. Clara's eyes softened. "Then love with fear. Just don't let fear lead." That was the shift. Not passion, not fireworks, growth. Miguel was discharged 2 days later. The house felt different, fragile, like something had survived, but not fully healed. That night, Henry removed the last hidden device from storage, placed it on the kitchen counter. Clara watched. "You're letting go?" she asked. Henry nodded. "I'm choosing to see what's in front of me. But healing isn't linear." And just when Henry believed he had finally chosen love over control, a call came from the board of directors. The investor wasn't finished. And now Henry's company itself was at risk. If he lost the company, he could lose everything. Henry thought declining the deal would end it. It didn't. 3 days later, an emergency board meeting was called. The investor had leverage, major shares, influence. "Legal weight. You've become emotionally compromised," one board member said bluntly. Henry kept his voice calm. "My personal life is not a liability. Your refusal to relocate cost us a strategic expansion." Translation: "You chose your family over profit, and now we're punishing you." By the end of the meeting, it was clear. If Henry didn't sell or step down, they would move to force him out. That evening, Henry sat alone in his office at home. Not the security room. The real office. Financial reports covered the desk. If he lost controlling shares, he could lose liquidity. If liquidity tightened, Miguel's private treatment plans could suffer. And that fear returned. Not guilt this time, survival. Clara entered quietly. "You look like you're preparing for war." "I might be," he answered. She read his expression carefully. "What's happening?" "They're pressuring me out." Silence. "And if they succeed?" she asked. Henry hesitated. "We'll lose more than a company." And there it was again, control slipping. The next morning, Henry was distant again. Phone calls non-stop, lawyers involved. Financial strategists hired. Miguel noticed immediately. "You're leaving again," he said softly. "I'm right here," Henry insisted. "But physically present isn't the same as emotionally available." Clara pulled Henry aside. "You promised stability. I'm protecting our future. You're disappearing." That word hit hard. Disappearing. It was exactly what he used to do. Retreat into work. Retreat into control. Retreat into calculation. That night, Clara stood in the kitchen, staring at the small silver bookmark Henry had given her. Some stories deserve to be followed to the end. But what if he still didn't know how to stay? When Henry walked in, she didn't smile. "I won't watch you choose fear again." He looked exhausted. "I'm not choosing fear, I'm fighting." "For what?" she asked. "For security. For control," she corrected. He raised his voice without meaning to. "You think love pays medical bills?" The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Clara's expression changed. Not angry, wounded. "You still think I'm here for money?" "No," he said quickly. "But the damage was done. Once again, Miguel heard everything, but this time he didn't stay quiet. He rolled into the kitchen. "You're doing it again." Henry froze. Doing what? Fighting instead of listening. Miguel looked at Clara. "She stayed when you didn't." That sentence landed heavier than any accusation. "She didn't leave when you were broken." Henry felt something collapse inside him. Miguel turned to his father. "Why do you only fight when you're scared?" "Children, they see through everything." That night, Henry sat alone in the dark living room. No monitors, no phone, no noise. Just the weight of truth. He wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of losing control again. Because control meant he would never feel as helpless as he did on that highway. But love requires helplessness. It requires risk. It requires surrender. And Henry had never learned surrender. Clara walked past him toward the hallway. "Are you leaving?" he asked quietly. She stopped. "I can't keep loving someone who disappears every time life gets hard." That was it. The real fracture. Not dramatic, not explosive. But honest. And honesty is irreversible. Henry stood. Not defensive. Not commanding. Vulnerable. "I don't want to lose you." Silence. "I don't know how to not fight everything." Clara's eyes filled slightly. "Then stop fighting me." That was the line. The turning point. But just as Henry stepped toward her, his phone rang. The board had filed a motion. If approved, he could be removed as CEO within days. Everything he built, on the brink. And now he had to choose again. Fight for the company, or fight for the life he was building. Henry looked at Clara, then at Miguel, watching from the hallway, then at the phone. The old Henry would answer immediately, strategize, control, but this time he let it ring, and walked toward Clara instead. The phone kept ringing. Board members, lawyers, pressure. Henry stared at the screen. Old instinct screamed, "Answer it. Take control. Fight." Instead, he turned it face down, and walked toward Clara. For once, he said quietly, "I'm not choosing the company." Silence filled the room. "I've spent years preparing for disaster," he continued, "but I never prepared for love." Clara didn't speak. She was waiting, not for promises, for proof. The next morning, Henry entered the corporate headquarters. No anger. No desperation, just clarity. The board was ready to vote. One member leaned forward. "You're risking everything over emotion." Henry nodded calmly. "Yes," murmurs spread. "You think that makes you weak?" he continued. "I built this company by predicting fear. But I almost lost my son because I tried to control what can't be controlled." Silence. "You want to remove me? Do it." That stunned them. He wasn't negotiating. He wasn't defending. He was surrendering power. And power doesn't know how to react to surrender. "If I lose this company," Henry finished, "I still go home to my son." That changed the room. Because men who are no longer afraid to lose are impossible to manipulate. The vote was postponed, not victory, but not defeat. Back at home, something unexpected happened. Miguel insisted on trying the parallel bars again, without being asked, without pressure. Henry stood a few feet away, not hovering, not instructing, just present. "Ready?" Clara asked gently. Miguel nodded. He gripped the bars, moved one foot, then the other. His legs trembled. Henry's instinct screamed to rush forward, but he stayed still, because this wasn't about control, it was about trust. Miguel released one hand from the bar. For half a second, he balanced. Half a second, but it was real. Henry's breath caught. Clara whispered, "You're doing it." Miguel looked at his father. Not for rescue, for belief. Henry didn't move. "I'm right here," he said, and Miguel took one assisted step toward him. That night, Henry sat beside Miguel's bed. "No cameras," Miguel said softly. Henry smiled faintly. "No cameras. Are you scared?" Miguel asked. Henry considered the question honestly. "Yes, me too." They sat in shared silence. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't guilt-filled. It was honest. And honesty is lighter than control. In the garden, under soft lights, Henry found Clara. "I almost lost everything trying to protect what I love," he said. Clara watched him carefully. "I don't want to protect love anymore." He stepped closer. "I want to participate in it. No grand speech. No dramatic music moment, just truth. I love you," he said. Not out of desperation, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Clara's eyes softened. "You don't love perfectly," she replied. "I know, but you love bravely." That was enough. She kissed him. Not because he promised safety, but because he chose vulnerability. Months later, the company stabilized, not through aggression, but through restructuring and compromise. Henry stepped down as CEO voluntarily, kept equity, reduced pressure, more time at home. The mansion no longer felt like a fortress. It felt lived in. Music in the kitchen, books scattered on tables. No security monitors glowing in the dark. Henry walked into the old security room one final time. Empty now. No screens, no feeds. He removed the last wiring panel from the wall, closed the door, locked it, not out of secrecy, but closure. Because that version of him, the man who watched instead of lived, was gone. He'd installed cameras to protect his son, but what he really needed was courage. Courage to stay when fear told him to run. Courage to love without guarantees. Courage to let go of control, because love isn't safer when it's monitored. It's stronger when it's trusted. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a man can do is turn off the cameras and finally step into the room.